Welcome to Uncommon Courtesy, local edition.
We give you the courtesy of conversation
That's uncommonly spoke of.
I'm DMac,
I'm Wesley.
and this is the show. Special guest we have in the building, the Honorable Judge Tracy Flood. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me today.
We're very pleased to have you here.
A big reason why we wanted to have you on our show was just to kind of get a little insight into you and what made you want to become a judge. What got you into this whole entire career choice?
I am excited to be here for your first BCAT show, and pretty much my reason for serving continues on from when I joined the Navy. It's a sense of serving the community in which you're in. Being a judge is one job that a lot of individuals do not understand. It is service. It's public service. It comes with great responsibility. It comes with great selflessness. And when I say that, I mean from the standpoint of you no longer are able to do things that everyday people do. So there's a lot of restrictions that come with that. But I believe to whom much is given, much is required. And as a child growing up in the city of Chicago, I was given a lot of opportunities and introduced to a lot of diversity that we don't see here in the great Northwest.
No, absolutely.
So I felt it was my duty to be able to go and serve in a capacity where there's so many limitations set upon us as women of color, as Black people.
So did you always want to practice law as a child, or was there anything else that you wanted to do? Because you also said you joined the Navy too.
In high school, I went to Lane Tech High School. Shout out for those Lane Tech kites, hey! But in high school, I actually had an opportunity to be a candy striper. You don't hear about that anymore. So it's when you go into the hospitals and you're trying to figure out your career. So I had many opportunities because of the high school that I went to as one of the top 10 in the state of Illinois. There was this sense of, watching the Cosby Show growing up and also seeing others that looked like me in positions of authority and leadership. So from the age of 5, I knew I wanted to be an attorney. And that one little, I was very sickly as a child, but having spent some time in the hospital and seeing the nurses, I said, let me see if I can do this. And so me and a good high school friend of mine, we both spent the one of our summer high school times at St. Anne's Hospital on the west side of Chicago, being candy stripers. The Navy was a way of being able to pay for my education. We know education isn't, beyond high school, isn't cheap, and affordability and all of those things are an issue for many students who don't have financial family wealth or opportunities. So the Navy GI Bill, tuition assistance. So while on active duty, I attended classes at OC, finished up my AA degree, transferred over to the University of Washington, worked for the state for a year with doing juvenile rehabilitative work down at Green Hill School, where you hear about all the challenges, and things have changed a lot. But there was always this sense of, this is the career path I wanted to be on, but also let's go see, because in the medical field, just like in the legal field, you're serving.
Yes. So, like, one of the things that I really love about you being here and also being a judge here is that I see, like, a lot of times as being a Black male or just even a young Black child when I was a little bit younger, you don't see a lot of people who go into the fields of the police force or even law enforcement or even governance of any sort. And so that's something that is really special to me, that sticks out to me, that you chose that path, and not only chose it, you were able to achieve what you were able to achieve. And I know we're kind of jumping ahead a bit, but running for the Bremerton's seat for being judge here, how was that for you, and what made you come to that conclusion of taking that step?
I believe I looked at what is in Kitsap County at the main courthouse, the faces on the wall. So there's faces on the wall that are in the court administrator's office of our members of the bar, and then there's members of the bar that are deceased.
Absolutely.
And at the State Bar Association as well, there's members' faces on the wall of past presidents. So when you look at the history within the legal profession, the numbers of minority attorneys is a lot smaller in numbers, stats. The WSBA has done studies in the profession, and it's just recently where there's been some significant changes. I previously ran for the district court open seat, and that was a county-wide election. And that was a grassroots campaign where I said, why not? It's an open seat. And from that campaign, I learned a lot of things. And being a resident of Kitsap County and a member of the bar, it lacks diversity. And so I knew that if I wanted to effectuate change, I had to be the change that I wanted to see. Absolutely. And that nobody was going to hand me anything.
Yes. And so we have an epidemic of drug use here in Kitsap County. And I know a lot of those cases probably end up in front of you. How do you feel that the court's being flooded with these cases now?
So specifically what I can say is Bremerton is the most diverse city in Kitsap County. We also don't have a permanent shelter for the unhoused. We also are coming off the pandemic of COVID, which is now an endemic. It hasn't gone away. And these issues where we're looking at meth and all of the new drugs where they're laced with other things and being mixed in with horse tranquilizers and all these things, where you're seeing a lot more than what is marijuana, where that's been legalized. We see it compounded with mental health issues. So when you take drug issues compounded with mental health issues, then things are even more urgent as to being able to address those. And our police force and our fire departments are spread thin because they're providing emergency services in areas that they shouldn't be providing them in. And then you're seeing that revolving door where it's I'm going to estimate $150 plus dollars a day for someone to be locked up in the county jail. Our community court program, it averages about $15 a day. And that's one in which we can address the programs and the needs for both mental health and the drug issues and provide services.
What services were you left with from the previous administration to handle this problem that it's been going on for a while? It says this doesn't just come around during COVID. I've been living here for 35 years of my life. And we all know that Kitsap County, there's not a lot to do here. So even as children, what you're doing is going to house parties. What you're doing is, you're drinking, and then some people end up doing drugs. And next thing you know, the kids you went to high school with and junior high with are strung out on drugs. So I know a lot of them have had to go through the court system. People I know, myself has had to go through the court system. So you understand kind of the revolving door of the court system. What services were you left with, and what services were you able to put in place during your administration to kind of make it so that it's not just a revolving door of jail or prison and then back to the streets and then back to jail and prison again?
The previous administration had been there 20 plus years, and there wasn't any real alternative programs or any license, restoration, LFOs or anything like that being done in Bremerton Municipal Court. And since I have been in office and serving in this position, we've created an interpreter calendar. We've created and gotten funding through the state and the 0.1% to create our community court program. And when I say community court program, it's serving the whole person. It's wraparound services.
Yeah. You said the interpreter program.
So interpreter calendar, where when I came into the Bremerton Municipal Court, they were using what's called the language line for non-English speaking defendants that appeared in the court. But the majority of individuals that were coming into the court language was mum. And mum is a dialect that is different from Spanish. And the language line didn't have any mum interpreters.
Okay.
So what I experienced was an interpreter who was Spanish speaking, who had been arranged for a mum defendant. Okay. And so from that, when I realized the language line doesn't have it, there's a limited number of interpreters that speak mum. I created twice a month where there were in-person hearings for all interpreter cases with defendants that first language was not English. Okay. And so we've had at least around 95% rate of return in the defendants on that calendar appearing, having conversations with their attorneys, understanding the proceedings because the interpreters are there in person. And so I've on that calendar, I usually have 2 Spanish-speaking interpreters and 2 mom-speaking interpreters.
So what you're saying is that these people actually come to court because they have people who can actually help represent them properly. Yes. They're not just being glossed over. If a person comes to court and they can't understand, you can't understand what's going on, you're either going to get me to plead guilty really easily because you're going to say, hey, this isn't any jail time with this, or you're pretty much going to just leave because there's just no way that they can. Exactly. So that's a pretty big deal right there. Yes.
Yeah. I remember when I was a young man, I was in court one time, and this lady I worked with at Walmart was in there. She was given charge of giving her young kids alcohol, and she tried to play like she didn't speak English, and then she got to leave for like 2 weeks because they couldn't get the interpreter in there.
It makes a difference.
What was the next program? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. So in addition to the interpreter calendars that I created, I also began to bring young kids into the courtroom so that they could see and experience and learn about the justice system in a positive way, and getting funding to create a community court program which addresses both mental health and substance issues, and we're providing wraparound services. A part of creating that court program was being able to look at each position and reorganizing how the court staff was set up. So the probation department had a makeover, and instead of probation officers, they're support services specialists. And with that comes the positive of knowing while we're here to hold you accountable, we're also here to make sure you get the services that you need to be able to be successful in what the court is asking you to do.
How was that received by everyone? From because when you have a way of doing business, that's a normal way of doing business that everyone's been doing probably for the last at least 20 years because one administration's been in office.
And this county does not like change.
I think we both know that. And how was that received, and how are your new ideas received by the Bremerton judicial system, or whatever you want to?
We have 3 branches of government. The court is the judicial branch, and it's an independent branch. And the court is the city's court. The city created the court, but the city treats the court like a department. And that had been the history. And the history had been one in which there was more punitive way of doing things. Now, a lot of people, or there's some people that initially would send out negative, oh, you've got a liberal judge now and there. No, people go to jail. I don't just let them walk free or just nonchalantly say, oh, well, they're just going to be able to do what they want to do. No, there's accountability, but there's a way to be able to address accountability so that they're not coming back and not saying, well, you told me to do this. I can't do it because I don't know where to go. So in that community court program is our resource fairs too. We do 3 resource fairs quarterly. So the change was not received and still is not received in the most positive light because it is a new way of doing things. And also you're having to build the trust. If the previous administration said they were going to do A, B, and C, and they didn't do A, B, C, now you're coming in and you're saying you're going to do A, B, and C, you know, the department heads are a little leery going, well, we've kind of heard something similar before you were here, Judge Flood, you know. And I think this is any presiding judge around knows that the funding comes from the legislative branch, our city council. And so we're tied to that funding, but then that funding becomes ours to do and implement what we need to implement.
So it seems like you've come in and you've created programs for the community to actually help the community.
Yes.
And instead of it being punishment, it's still, they're still getting punished for their crimes, but it's more of corrections and rehabilitation. And it seems like you're getting a lot of blowback for that.
Yes.
And do you understand, do you know why, or do you have any ideas why you think they're doing it?
I think it's a combination of there has never been a woman of color, a Black person in such a position in the city. There's a lack of diversity in city government. And I know that there's some changes that are trying to be made by the city and creating a DEI manager's position and doing the DEI study where they hired contractors to come in and talk with employees. And that report demonstrated that the Bremerton Municipal Court and Public Works was the most diverse departments.
I heard you say they treat the judicial branch as a department, sort of like it's something that they can wield to, you know, almost, I don't want to, but kind of wield more than let it be its own independent branch that does as it should do alone. How is that affecting you as far as how you can effectuate change in our community?
Looking at it from being there now almost 3 years, it's made it difficult because there's so many limitations that are in place because there's general rules that allow and tells the judge that they're responsible for everything as the presiding judge. And then you have the city that has departments and heads and managers. And so technically in that system, I'm considered a department head versus as the same level as the mayor as an elected official.
Absolutely.
And the same level as the city council's president. So I'm then put into that box and questioned about any decisions that are being made based on perceptions versus getting all of the information and the details that are necessary to make an informed decision. And when the details are then given, still being questioned as if I'm a department.
Your Honor, we're going to take a small break, but when we come back, I also want to talk to you about how you've been characterized in the local paper out here. And we're going to keep going here, and we're going to hit you with a part 2. This is Uncommon Courtesy. We're going to see you right after this break.